Here's an uncomfortable truth about cruising. Most people don't have a bad cruise because the ship was bad. They have a bad cruise because the ship was wrong. Wrong for them. And the frustrating part is that every single warning sign was sitting right there in the booking, weeks before they ever printed a luggage tag. There are 7 of these signs. Some of them will cost you money, real money, hundreds of dollars. Some will cost you comfort, which on a 7-night sailing is worth almost as much. And one of them, the last one, nobody warns you about, because the cruise lines make more money when you don't check it. The good news? Every one of these can be caught, and most can be fixed, before you board. Let's make sure yours is the right ship. If we haven't met, I'm Amanda, your cruise companion. I've been on more than 25 sailings across Royal Caribbean, Carnival, MSC, Norwegian, and Costa. And I've booked the wrong ship for me at least 3 times, so this list comes from receipts, not theory. If videos like this are helpful, a like and a subscribe genuinely help me keep making them. Keep a pen handy, or don't worry about it. Near the end, I'll put the whole list on screen so you can just take a picture. Let's get into it, because the first sign is the one that traps more first-timers than all the others combined. Sign number 1. You chose the fare, not the vacation. If the main reason you booked this line is that the 7-night price was $200 cheaper than the next one, I understand, and I need you to look again. Cruise lines price 2 very different ways. Some charge more up front and include more on board. Others advertise a beautifully low fare and then sell you back the vacation one swipe at a time. The soda, the good coffee, the second entree, the water slide photo. I've seen a fare gap of $180 per person turn into an onboard gap of $600 the other direction on the exact same week at sea. So here's the fix, and it's simple. Before you compare fares, write down the 5 things you'll actually use every day: coffee, drinks, Wi-Fi, dining, kids club, and price the week, not the ticket. The cheapest line for your neighbor is not the cheapest line for you. And if you've already booked and your stomach just dropped a little, don't panic. In sign number 7, I'll tell you how to fix a wrong booking without losing your deposit. Stay with me for that one. Sign number 2. You booked the brand, but not the ship. This is the part nobody tells you. Every line's ads show their newest, shiniest vessel, and then the low fare that caught your eye is often on a ship 15 or 20 years older. Same logo on the funnel. Very different vacation. An older ship isn't a bad ship. Some of my favorite sailings were on smaller, older ladies. But if you booked because of a certain water park, a certain restaurant, a certain aft pool, you need to confirm that feature exists on your ship, not just in the commercial. And it goes beyond features. Ships within one brand can differ by 100,000 tons and 3,000 passengers. That's not a different model, that's a different species. Here's the fix. Search your exact ship's name plus the year it was built and last refurbished, and skim one recent review of that specific ship. 5 minutes, total. If what you fell in love with isn't on board, you want to know now, while changing is still cheap. Not on embarkation day, standing on deck, looking for a water slide that lives on a different ocean. Now, I can already hear some of you saying, Amanda, that's 2 research projects already, and we're only on sign 2. Where is all of this supposed to live? That's honestly why I finally sat down and wrote it all out. The booking countdown, the cabin guide, the included versus extra lists for the major lines, the break-even math, even the exact sentences to say on board. It became the Cruise Verdict Handbook, 196 pages, and the link is right down in the description. There's a code on your screen for those of you watching on the television. It's there if it helps, and only if you want it. Now, back to the ship, because sign number 3 is the one that can ruin a sailing, even when everything else is perfect. Sign number 3. The crowd won't match you. Every line has a personality, and, no judgment here, every kind of cruiser deserves their kind of ship. But the itinerary tells you who's coming aboard, and most people never read that signal. Short sailings, 3 and 4 nights, especially over a weekend, that's a floating celebration. School holiday weeks? Wall-to-wall families, which is wonderful if you're one of them, and exhausting if you booked for quiet. Longer itineraries, 10 nights and up, skew calmer and older. I learned this one the honest way. A few years back, I booked myself a 3-night weekend sailing out of Port Canaveral because I was tired and it was cheap, and I pictured 3 days of sea air and a book. What I got was 2 bachelorette parties on my hallway and a pool deck that was still going strong at 1 in the morning. Not loud in a fun way. Loud in a way where I sat on my balcony at midnight doing the math on how much I'd paid per hour of sleep. I felt genuinely foolish, because every sign was in the booking. The length, the weekend dates, the port, the price. The ship didn't fail me. My research did. Here's the fix. Before you book, ask yourself who else this exact sailing was designed for. The length, the dates, the departure port, and whether you'll be glad to share a pool deck with them. If the answer is no, moving 1 week or 2 nights can change the entire character of the cruise, often for the same money. Sign number 4. The dining system doesn't fit how you actually eat. This one costs people comfort every single night, and they never see it coming. Some ships still run traditional dining, an assigned table, an assigned time, often 5:30 or 8 o'clock, same waiters all week. Other lines run fully flexible dining, where you eat when you're hungry, like a resort. Neither is wrong. But if you're a family with a 6-year-old who melts down at 7, an 8 o'clock seating is a rough week. If you love the ritual of the same table and the waiter who remembers your iced tea, full flexibility can feel strangely lonely. I watched this play out on an MSC sailing a couple of years ago. A family of 5 at the podium on the first evening, Dad holding the little one, discovering their assigned seating was 8:15, and the maitre d' doing his very best with a dining room that was already spoken for. They ended up eating at the buffet 4 nights out of 7. Nothing wrong with the buffet, but they didn't choose it, and you could see it on their faces. That whole week was decided months earlier. In a booking screen they clicked past in 4 seconds. And here's what the cruise lines won't put in bold for you. On some ships, the good dining time is essentially gone by the time final payment rolls around. Here's the fix. The moment you book, the same day, go into your cruise account and look at your dining setup. Ask 3 questions. Is my time assigned? Can I change it? And is there a wait list? 1 5-minute phone call in month 3 beats standing at the dining room podium on night 1, asking for a table that stopped existing in July. Sign number 5. The onboard pricing punishes your specific habits. Let me start by being fair. None of this is a scam. Every price is published. But the same daily routine can cost wildly different amounts depending on the line. And this is where the wrong booking quietly becomes a $400 mistake. Across the big lines, a cocktail averages around $12.50. Drink packages for 2 on a 7-night sailing run in the neighborhood of $1,180. Specialty restaurants sit around $45 to $75 a person. Now, do the math for your habits, not the brochures. I once sat at a bar on deck 5 next to a lovely couple who'd bought the full package because everyone says you should. I watched them nurse 2 drinks a night. 2. At roughly $12 a drink, they needed 5 or 6 each per day just to break even, and they were paying package prices for lemonade money habits. Call it a $500 tip to the cruise line. The fix. Before you board, count your real daily drinks, coffees, and waters. Multiply honestly, and compare that to the package price on your line, because the break-even point is different on every one of them. Some lines your habits are cheap on. Some lines they're expensive on. That difference alone can decide which line is right. Sign number 6. You and your ship disagree about what a cruise is for. Very few people know to check this, and it changes everything. Some ships are the destination, enormous, spectacular, packed with slides and shows and 10 neighborhoods, and honestly, on those sailings the ports are almost an interruption. Other ships are transportation with excellent room service, smaller, calmer, built to deliver you to a new harbor every morning. Now look at your itinerary. Count the sea days. If you booked a giant resort ship on a port-heavy run, you'll be exhausted, racing gangways, and you'll barely touch the ship you paid a premium for. If you booked a quiet, modest ship with 3 sea days in a row, and you're someone who gets restless by lunch, that's a long 3 days, friend. It costs you money on one side and comfort on the other. I know what some of you are thinking. Amanda, can't a good cruiser enjoy both? Of course, I do. But enjoying both is not the same as paying for the wrong one. And I've met too many people on day 6 of a sailing that was perfect on paper and wrong in person. The fix is one honest question before you pay. Am I buying this ship or am I buying these ports? Then check that the sea day count matches your answer. 2 sea days or fewer for port people. 3 or more, on a ship with plenty to do, for ship people. Steady beats spectacular when spectacular doesn't fit. And that brings us to sign number 7, the one I promised you, the one nobody warns you about, the guarantee cabin gamble, and the fine print around fixing a wrong booking. A guarantee fare means you buy a category, inside, balcony, but the line picks your exact cabin, whenever it likes, and you cannot refuse it. The price is tempting, and sometimes the gamble pays off. Mine didn't. On a Norwegian sailing a few years ago, I took a guarantee balcony, felt very clever about the savings, and got assigned a cabin directly beneath the pool deck. Every morning at 6, I woke to the sound of deck chairs being dragged into position, one by one, like slow applause directly above my head. That's it. 6 a.m., every day. I saved about $200 and paid for it in sleep all week. Here's the fix, in 2 parts. Part 1. If quiet matters to you, pick your own cabin, and before you confirm it, look at the deck plan 1 deck above and 1 deck below. You want cabins sandwiched between cabins, not under a pool, a gym, or a nightclub. Part 2. And this is the rescue I promised back in sign 1. On most lines, before final payment, you can usually change your sailing, reprice, or move ships for little or nothing, and after final payment, your options shrink dramatically. So if this video just told you that you booked the wrong line, the calendar is your best friend. Call before that final payment date. It's the difference between a free correction and an expensive lesson. There's no shame in that phone call. The agents take them all day long, and they're glad to help. So, here's your list, clean, and this is your moment to take a picture of the screen. 1. Price the whole week, not the fare. 2. Research your exact ship, not the brand's newest ad. 3. Read the itinerary for who's coming aboard, and make sure you'll enjoy their company. 4. Check your dining time the day you book. 5. Do the drink and dining math for your habits, not the brochures. 6. Match the sea day count to whether you're buying the ship or the ports. And 7. Be careful with guarantee cabins, check the decks above and below, and make any changes before final payment. Now I want to hear from you, because this comment section teaches me as much as any sailing. Which of these 7 have you actually lived through, and which line turned out to be the wrong one for you? Tell me the story below. I read every single one. But here's the heart of it. Booking the wrong cruise line doesn't mean you were careless, and it certainly doesn't mean you should cruise less. It means the industry is very good at selling ships, and most of us were never taught how to buy them. You're not trying to find the cheapest ship on the ocean. You're trying to find your ship, the one where your money, your habits, and your idea of a perfect day all point in the same direction. That's not being cheap. That's refusing to pay for someone else's vacation. Next week, I'm covering the questions to ask a cruise line's agent on the phone before you ever give them a deposit, including the one question that almost always gets you a better cabin. I'm Amanda, your cruise companion. Check your final payment date, read your deck plan tonight, and I'll see you on the next one.